Hello and welcome to Bloke on the Range, and you'll be happy to note that you don't have to look at my ugly mug today because we're going to be doing some tabletop geekery. Today we're going to be looking at the provision of out-of-battery safeties in our two favourite rifle systems. So we've got an SMLE representing the Lee turn bolt system and a Kar 98K representing the Mauser 98 system. Now these are different systems and they have different solutions, part of which is imposed by the different diameters of the bolts and the fact that this is cock on closing and the fact that this is cock on open. Now first of all, we need to make clear what we're talking about and what we're not talking about. Now an out-of-battery firing, in the case of a locked breech firearm, we're not worrying about blowback, they're not locked anyway, is what happens if a cartridge that is in the chamber is fired without the breech being locked. So there's little or no resistance and the breech opens, bad things happen. Now the classic of this genre is the Ross Mark III rifle, the Canadian rifle that they went into World War I with. It was possible with the early ones, before they put a little pin in to rectify it, it was possible to put the bolt head in upside down so that it wouldn't actually turn to lock, and there was nothing preventing the firing system from actually actuating and from the tip of the firing pin reaching the primer. So it's not a general term for breech explosion, it's a specific term relating to an unlocked breech explosion. And one characteristic of it is that the bolt will come back with great force and likely end up in the face of whoever is behind it. So what I propose we do is take the bolts out and have a look at what's going on. Okay, so for those who are not intimately familiar, let's just do a bit of anatomy of a Lee type bolt. So you've got a bolt body that's quite slender, you've got a small locking lug, a large locking lug. This one ends up on the left side of the receiver when it's locked, this on the right. You've got a bolt head that is supported in a track on the receiver, so it doesn't rotate with respect to receiver, but rotates with respect to the bolt. Bolt handle, one piece with the bolt body, and then you've got a cocking piece at the back which is attached to the striker. Now, if we pull that back, what we see is that we've got a lug in there that does all the work and runs in this funny shaped track here. So if we zoom right in, when the action's fired off, that lug sits at the bottom of that track, and that means that the firing pin can protrude and strike the cartridge. When you open the bolt, doing this upside down so you can see it better, the lug runs up that track, that cam track, and sits in that notch there, and you'll see that that notch is further away from the bolt face than that notch, which means that the firing pin is withdrawn. When you cock the rifle, the bent is left on the sear, and then once it's cleared, once the lug there has cleared that lug there, you can rotate the bolt like that, and then it's held back, and when you pull the trigger, off it goes. So open, back, clears the lug, rotate, pull the trigger, bang. It's difficult to get a good view on that, so let's just try. There we go. I think you've got that. Now, if that lug is broken, it's not present, you've got a dangerous situation, replace the cocking piece, there's plenty of them around. Now, if the bolt is not turned far enough, in fact you can't do this, you'll see in a minute, it will sit on that lug, nothing will happen until the bolt is fully rotated. Now, if the bolt isn't quite in battery, what happens is, and I'll show you this in a minute, is that the lug strikes that surface there, forcing the bolt handle down into battery. So provided that lug is intact, this cannot possibly fire out of battery, because that cannot allow the striker to go forward far enough unless the bolt has been fully rotated so that it can fall into that hole, that notch there. So let's see how this works in practice. So if we try to induce it to fire out of battery, If we don't push it far enough, it'll just pop open like that. Because here, that surface is at an angle. That helps with forcing a sticky cartridge into the chamber, and it's part of the primary extraction system. Well, mostly it's opposite pair on the opposite side is. That allows the bolt to come back. So here we go, I've got it just hooked up. What happens if I pull the trigger? Exactly as I said before, it just forces the bolt into battery, and it probably rubs the striker of a lot of momentum so that it doesn't, it might not actually go off. So as you can see, it is quite impossible for this to fire out of battery, provided the lug that does all the work is intact. So onto the Mauser 98 system now, a bit of anatomy again. Here we have a much fatter bolt body. The bolt head is integral with the bolt body, and this time it's the extractor pivots with respect to the bolt. And then up the back, you've got all these gubbins here, which control, well, everything. And you've got the safety catch and how the shroud there doesn't rotate. You basically, you've got a locking system here. So because it's cock on open and quite a large diameter bolt, you've got this great big long cam track that pulls the cocking piece back. You see that it's got a cam surface there. So when you open the bolt, it pulls it back. And this is kind of hard because these springs are quite stiff. There you go. See that? This lock here, what that does is prevents this entire assembly from turning until the bolt is ready to rotate. Normally there's a notch there, it's worn off on this one, which makes the rifle nice and slick. So actually all I have to do is press the lock and it'll slip down. And then you can see again how those cams interact. Now, as a result, if it's not quite in battery, all that happens is that this part of the cocking piece strikes that cam and it just rotates the bolt into battery, and it robs it of enough energy probably to prevent actual ignition. So let's put it in the rifle and have a look. Okay, so let's just put it part way. Pull the trigger, off. Bolt handles up, mild, off. So there you go. Now you've seen how the out of battery safeties work on this. And just to reiterate the point, an out of battery firing is only if the bolt basically ends up flying out the back because it's not locked. It's not a generic term for any form of breech explosion. So a breech explosion where part of the chamber's blown off or the bolt head cracks through due to massive overpressure, that's not an out of battery firing. By definition, out of battery means unlocked firing in a system that is supposed to be locked. So there you go. I hope that was at least vaguely interesting. Sorry for droning on so long about minor mechanical details, but hey, it floats my boat, maybe it floats yours. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much to all our patrons. If you haven't become a patron yet, please consider doing so. There's a link in the end and in the description. It really helps us to keep the channel chugging along. And please check that you are still subscribed and click the notification bell and all that to make sure you see our videos when they first publish. So see you again sometime. Bye.